Okay.
I'm up on Zoom.
So we're live. Our audio is live, and this is a remote, special late night edition of the intelligence assessment. I believe, Kevin, you would have received that email.
Stand by, Jason.
Yep.
Let me check.
Yep. So we've got welcome to all of our viewers on patreon.com. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our generous sponsors. I think a lot of people might have seen earlier today, I am in Florida. I was at the Turning Point USA conference, and I'll be posting that video later. We had a presentation from, there we go. Good to see you, Kevin.
Okay, I don't see you yet, but at least you can see me. That's good.
Okay, so let me kill the phone here. Now, do we hear you is the question.
And yeah, I can't
yes.
hear you either. Let's see.
You cannot hear me. Give me a second. Let's see.
Okay, there you go. I
Good.
see you, Jason.
Perfect, perfect. And I want to make sure that you can see
audio.
the screen. Sorry for all this, everybody. You know, when it's remote, it's always tricky, and stuff is tricky. So we're going to be talking today about Google and the CIA and the strange bedfellows that they are. Let's see, show large screen. How do I get you to fill the screen?
Testing, 1, 2, testing.
I hear you. I hear you for sure. Everything sounds good. Hi, Kevin. I can hear you. We're live right now. Can you not hear me?
No, I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Well, all right.
Well, I'll tell you, worst comes to worst, we'll do the video here and audio over the phone.
Let me make sure. Well, you should be having my audio. We can do that. We can do that. Audio over the phone. As long as you can hear me, that's totally
I can hear
fine.
you fine.
Okay, so everybody can hear you, and I think we're ready to begin, Kevin.
I can't hear you now.
Can't
can
hear
you
me
get
now.
your phone a little closer?
Sure. Hang on. Let's
Okay,
do
thanks.
this. Let me get a microphone for this phone, and then that way. See, it's interesting, Kevin. You do these shows on the road, and it's always a different setup. And I appreciate.
There you go.
I appreciate your flexibility. Okay, how about now? You should be able to hear me pretty well now.
Okay, I can hear you real good on the phone. Yeah, as we were discussing earlier, when I got on in the studio tonight, Skype was completely wiped off my computer, and then the phone stopped sending texts, so I had no communication with you. But hey, as always, my friend, we press on.
Absolutely. Now, I'm having a bit of a problem because I'm trying to get you full screen here. How come that's not doing that? Unpin video. I don't know. Full screen is what I would really like. Pin video, remove.
If you click on my picture, you have the split screen like I have?
I've just got a tiny little you.
Yeah, if you click on the tiny little me, it should go to big screen, I think. I just did that with you.
Yeah, I can't seem to get it to do that.
Well, we're having technical fun as always.
Windows, Zoom Pro. Do I need a Pro account? I had it full screen last time I had guests on.
Yeah, I don't know. It should be working, but yeah.
Well, Kevin, let's just get underway with the show, and we'll deal with it as it is. Kevin, there was a lot of stuff going on this week. Of course, we had the hearing for General Flynn. Whoops. There's an echo coming through.
Okay, interesting. Something just popped up. Default for display scale, whatever the heck that is. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, that's on mine. Don't worry about that.
Oh, okay.
I'm just working on improving the image for everybody who's viewing you. But okay. Anyway,
You get an echo?
the echo is coming from the phone. Let's just go like this. So we had, of course, General Flynn and the hearing with General Flynn. Everybody's very concerned about what's going to happen there. Is there a headset that you could plug in, Kevin? Because that's, I think, that echo of me. Maybe I'll just shut up. Let's just do your slides, and we'll do it that way. How's that sound?
Okay, that's right. We've been in worse situations than this. I'll tell you. Well, we can go with this, especially with this subject matter. It's just interesting that my computer got boondoggled.
Exactly.
And we always have to work around that. So, can you get the slides up? There you go.
There we go. We'll just do that.
Okay, super. And appreciate everybody's patience standing by. Jason, the world traveler's been all over the map this week with the Flynn hearings and the whistleblowers with the Clinton Foundation. There's some really, really, really big things going on. And I think we'll probably, once those kind of, we know what happened with General Flynn, which was an outrage, but as things unfold, we'll do a program on that. Tonight, I want to talk about Google. And we all know Google is capturing just about everything regarding what we input through Gmail and other things. But I don't think that most people realize how pervasive Google is in its connections with the CIA directly and with the NSA. And that's what I want to reveal tonight, is that Google is an arm of the CIA. Now, that sounds bizarre and over the top, and that's why I always back this stuff up with facts and evidence. And we're going to go through some of that as we proceed on this evening. So this is surveillance from space. Let me give you a quote from Eric Schmidt, who's a former Google CEO. If I get this come up here. There, okay, I see at the top. There we go. Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google, said this, quote, "One of the things that eventually happens is we don't need you to type at all, because we know where you are, we know where you've been, we can more or less guess what you're thinking about." Now think about that, how chilling that is, that Google would brag in a statement of rare candor like that. And you'll see exactly what he meant coming up here. Yeah, this computer is running really, really slow. Now,
I'm clicking it, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You're clicking, okay, gotcha, great, perfect. I can't see the bottom of my screen here, so, okay. Another quote, this is Google. "The societal goal is our primary goal. We always tried to say that with Google. Some of the most fundamental questions people are not thinking about. How do we organize people?" And you can see I italicized that. "How do we motivate people?" I italicized that. "It's really an interesting problem," he says. "How do we organize our democracies?" That's Larry Page, who founded Google with Sergey Brin. We'll talk about them later. But that last statement he made, just think about that. Google is working towards organizing our democracy. That is chilling, what he just said. And as I get into the connections of Google and the CIA, you'll see how serious these comments are. Are you still getting an echo there with me, Jason?
Oh, no, the echo's only when I talk, so I'll stay quiet.
I am. No, that's okay. I'm fine on this end. All right, we'll roll with it, buddy. All right, now this is how Google became connected with the CIA. The CIA created what it calls a quote-unquote venture capital firm to reach out to industry and obtain their technology for use in CIA and NSA programs. This is the In-Q-Tel site. These are quotes from the site. People can go to iqt.org, click on some of these AI brain interface technology and kind of chilling things like that. Their site says this: IQT identifies startups with potential for high impact on national security. Now, their version of national security is not the same one we have. So I want people to understand and remember that. Their version of national security is expanding their power and protecting themselves from any sort of assault. So on national security, and works closely with them to deliver new capabilities that our government partners need to boost their technological edge. Another thing that you'll find on the In-Q-Tel site, IQT works side by side with the venture capital community. Well, that sounds all nice and good, doesn't it? Until we find out who that venture capital community is. To identify cutting edge technology that has the potential for commercial success, and let's follow the money, Jerry, but more importantly, the potential for high national security impact. What that equals is whatever the CIA needs. So whenever you, sadly, whenever you hear the CIA talk about, or the NSA, but specifically the CIA, whenever you hear them talk about doing this for national security, they have a different version of national security than we do. For them, it's self-preservation and expansion.
Right. You know, one of the things that concerns me here, Kevin, is also they're talking about government partners. Who are the government partners?
Yeah, we're about to see that, and it is more expansive and deeper, I think, than that most people know. As we go on, we'll see who those partners are. What Google tries to hide in all of their history and all of their write-ups regarding their founding, they try to hide their true origin because they don't want people to know. But this is the origin of Google and how it started. Is it connected to the CIA? Well, the algorithms, the research, and the grant money all came from the CIA and the NSA to Brin and Page as they wrote these codes that eventually became Google. So the technology behind Google Earth was developed by a company called Intrinsic, which no longer exists. And Intrinsic in 1999 created what they called Keyhole Incorporated. Now that's an interesting word. I can't say much about that, but I can tell you it was chosen on purpose. The Keyhole program was contacted. Sergey Brin and Larry Page were contacted by the CIA through In-Q-Tel and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, were contacted directly to begin figuring out how they're going to map databases in terms of global geography. That gave Keyhole a large amount of CIA contracts. So the program Keyhole that eventually became Google Earth was started with CIA grant money and CIA contracts. That is really important for people to remember. You got anything to add, Jason?
Well, I'm hanging on your every word because this really lines up with some of the things I've been talking with David Hawkins about recently.
Yeah, good, great. Yeah, jump in anytime. In 2004, Google went public and bought Keyhole and all the CIA investors involved with Project Keyhole. They absorbed it into Google's exploding internet applications and their entire platform, and that became, guess what, Google Earth. So Google Earth came from contracts with the CIA and the NSA that helped them form the codes and algorithms and programs for what is now Google. That was CIA seed money. You will not find this anywhere in any of Google's history or how they came to be. They've hidden this. I don't know if that's because they don't want bad press or if the CIA forbade them from doing that because they signed a CIA secrecy agreement. So,
Kevin, when you say CIA investors, do you mean groups within the CIA or these corporations that are investing? I mean, CIA investors, that sounds strange.
Yeah, it's corporations, big corporations like Lockheed Martin, massive military industrial complex corporations that do most of the spying for the CIA and the NSA, and I'll get into a couple of those, but that's who we're talking about.
Extremely blurry line between corporations and government entities, and that also, I would think, blurs the line in terms of the law of what we can do to prevent these agencies from spying on Americans.
Yeah, there is no line. The line has been erased. For example, Lockheed Martin is the private spying arm of the CIA and the NSA. And the CIA, always being sly, set it up that way because now its dirty work is being done by private contractors. It hangs out billions of dollars in contracts, and of course, that's all they're after is contract money. I used to be a program manager for one of the military industrial contractors, and you're just driven to get government contracts if you want to keep your job. So that's all they care about is money and contracts.
And as George Costanza would say, the line is a dot to them. They've crossed the line. They're way past the line.
Yeah. And I want people to understand there is no line. There is no line between the CIA, Lockheed Martin, SAIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, and others. They are essentially the CIA private arm, and that protects the CIA from a lot of things. It protects it from getting in trouble for some of the things that it's doing. Cutouts and third parties have always been a CIA favorite because then the CIA has its hands off, or at least the appearance of having its hands off, and if something goes bad, It's the cutouts problem, not the CIA's. It's as old as the CIA is, created back in 1947. So that's where Keyhole came from. And this is interesting because if you go down to the very bottom, when Google acquired an In-Q-Tel, what Google did and does and is still doing is bringing in executives from the government into Google. In this case, a fellow by the name of Rob Painter was brought into Google from CIA In-Q-Tel, and good old Rob had the huge deep state connections to the CIA, the NSA, the intelligence and military contracting complex, defense firms like, and here we go, here are the partners, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and Lockheed Martin. So essentially, what Google did was bring the master of the CIA spying private corporations, massive corporations, brought them in to be a part of Google, actually employed by Google. And so what we're starting to see is the CIA's hands are all over Google, all through Google, and all around Google. And that's something that you just never hear for obvious reasons. And I love this. The CIA contributed a bunch of money, millions of dollars into the Keyhole program, billions actually. But the amount of money that the CIA invested into Keyhole and Google is unknown, of course. So we can't know how many millions of our tax dollars went into this global spying apparatus. Here we go again, secret budgets. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, I work for most of these intelligence agencies throughout my career, and they do all the intelligence mapping of buildings. And Google Earth Street View, you can go right down to the door of a hotel. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency assisted Google with providing that capability through its geo programs. So, and this all comes from CIA Pentagon satellites, which the NGA uses, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency uses to spy. These are spy satellites that are now essentially working for Google. So, and to give you an idea, Google is not just the most, excuse me, globally expansive intelligence arm of the CIA and the NSA, but they have so powerfully built their structure that other companies, huge companies, are dependent on Google for their own survival. For example, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, Lyft, Uber, and more depended on Google to even operate. If Google went down, they go down. So they've got this whole family that they've created of even corporations outside of Google that are dependent on Google for their very survival. So they built a multi-billion-dollar business with all of this and all of these other corporations that are dependent on them, like pups to a mother hound. And Google is the gatekeeper for all of these companies. All of the information, for example, Uber, Twitter, Facebook, all that information goes through and is manipulated by who? Google. They have control of all of it. Therefore, they have control of all these companies as well. And Google acts as not just the gatekeeper, but also the storer of their information. And it loves when people get their droids and their iPhones. Google does, because that's just another data set on another person that they get. More about the origin. 2008, Google won a CIA contract. Oh, gee, have we heard about any of these CIA contracts anywhere? No. Everybody thinks Google has no connections to U.S. intelligence or the shadow government, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. The opposite is true. Google in 2008 won a huge CIA contract to run their intelligence database. It's also used by the NSA and the FBI. So this is how the CIA always does it. Hey, here's a $50 million contract in the case of Amazon. Here's a $600 million contract. We'll bring you into this contract. You sign it, you get $600 million. We can use you for our surveillance. You sign all of our secrecy agreements, and you will never, ever be able to talk about this relationship or what we're doing in the rest of your life. So you hang the money out there, and you recruit these companies because they want money, and then you bind them by CIA agreements, and the whole thing stays in the shadows. They had a $27 million contract to provide the NGA with geospatial visualization services. So that's another $27 million that the CIA NGA has that connects it to Google and to Google Earth. These are huge, huge, huge contracts that they're signing up with these so-called partners that we talked about earlier. So what this does is, and this is what people don't understand, Google is not just collecting all of our data for its advertising purposes, which it is, but it's also become the eyes of America's defense and intelligence agencies, most specifically the CIA and the NSA. The CIA and the NSA are now using Google as their eyes for global surveillance. And I want people to just let that hang there for a second and just remember that.
You know,
critically important.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I can't recall if it was in the meeting with you or in one of our separate conversations, but Bill Binney said that I asked him if he felt that Google would become a threat to the intelligence agencies in the United States, and he answered without hesitation, yes.
Well, and you know why that is? Because Google, like Lockheed Martin, is doing, let's see, the last estimate I heard was 70% of all the surveillance that the CIA and NSA does
Wow.
is handled by Google and Lockheed Martin. So that means most of the power for global surveillance is now in the hands of Google, now in the hands of Lockheed Martin. And if they wanted to increase their global control, they can kick the CIA out of that all the time. But I'll have to disagree with Bill on one count, and that's this, because the CIA is not stupid. These companies have entered into a contract with the CIA. They have signed a CIA secrecy agreement. They have signed CIA contract agreements, and they're bound forever by those. So if they try to mess with the CIA, kind of like Chucky Schumer said, if they try to mess with the CIA and throw the CIA and then dominate the world, they're going to have some problems. The CIA still is a global monster, despite Google.
Wow.
Okay, Lockheed Martin and SAIC, which are mega contractors. I've talked about this before in previous programs that we've done. Lockheed Martin is a massive corporation under the same security constraints, clearances, and restrictions as the CIA. It is a private CIA, and it's huge. And it does, as I mentioned, 70% plus of the CIA and NSA's surveillance. It now has, what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of NSA employees are leaving NSA and going to work for, guess who? Google. So Google is replete with former CIA and NSA officers who are now working for Google and making six figures. So as the CIA has slyly done in the NSA, they've got their own people now working inside of Google. Hey, what a surprise. That's what the CIA does, is penetration. It is so large that they refer to it as NSA West out in California, the size of this monster with SAIC. And by the way, speaking of Bill Binney, with Project Trailblazer, which was unlocking NSA surveillance on American citizens that Bill Binney and Tom Drake and others exposed, when NSA was doing those programs, it was SAIC that was doing the contract work for NSA on the domestic surveillance program. And Trailblazer, which was Bill and Kirk Wiebe and Tom's point, was so expensive, it wasn't working, and it was spying on American citizens. They were proposing thin thread. Well, guess who put together the Trailblazer program? SAIC, and it failed. And they lost $7 billion in the messed up contract that SAIC did with the NSA because the program failed. It cost the taxpayers $7 billion. No one heard about that, probably. SAIC was not punished for that, and SAIC is still a major active contractor for the CIA. So Bill, Kirk, and Tom, that's what they were involved in, was Trailblazer versus Thin Thread. And Trailblazer was a failure. It was spying on U.S. citizens, and it cost billions of dollars.
You know, setting aside the not hearing about $7 billion, I never even heard of SAIC.
That's the idea. These people like to, of course, I worked with all these characters when I was out there in the private sector with corporations. But hey, they don't care. They're making billions of dollars from CIA contracts and just stacking the money to the roof. So they stay quiet on purpose because they are the private CIA.
But what does SAIC stand for?
Space Applications International Corporation, I believe is what that stands for.
It's also CIA with an S added backwards.
Now, gee, what a coincidence.
That is almost stupid.
Well, you know, something, yeah. They're so arrogant sometimes. They're stupid. It's like claiming that one of the passports of the hijacker survived the World Trade Center collapse. You know, they found on the rubble. It's that stupid. But sadly, I think most people believe the government, believe some of this stuff, and these companies hide back in the shadows. I think in a previous program, I talked about what I call the secret intelligence industrial complex. That is the massive complex made up of these intelligence contractors, Lockheed, Raytheon, SCIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, massive, unelected, unreported, top secret work that is done by these companies and bound by CIA secrecy agreements, and no one knows about it.
Wow.
So an important pointer, and I italicized it, the CIA spent years, and I want to emphasize this, the CIA spent years working with Google on secret and top secret programs. Google is directly connected and intertwined with the CIA. That's what we're proving here. People, I would encourage them to do so. People can go out and Google and research Google. It's funny. They can go out and research Google, whatever, all this stuff. Use Google against Google. Hey, that works, you know. You know, it's a wonderful search engine. I think we'll all agree. But what they do is they give us all these wonderful free services so they can get our data. And that's kind of how they started. But Google's been working on secret and top secret programs and operations with the CIA and helped the CIA and the NGA literally build Google Earth. Google Earth is not just an amazing technological program for people to see buildings from space. It's a technological program used by the CIA for surveillance.
But Kevin, why would they make it publicly available at all? Why not just make Google Earth and leave it at the CIA? Why do they want people to be able to see it?
But the CIA could not do, nor could the NGA for that matter, they could not do or come up with this technology by themselves. That's why they created In-Q-Tel to reach out there and get contractors with the programmers and the super scientists, which basically Sergey Brin and Larry Page were. I mean, they're brilliant. They can reach out and they can hire these people as private contractors. So the CIA does not have the personnel, the resources, or the facilities to do this. So they come right out in the open. They don't come out publicly. I'd encourage people to go to the In-Q-Tel site and read the sweet honey-like language on there. And, you know, you start smelling that after a while. But Google, CIA, NSA intertwined with one another. They have been. They are now to the tune of billions of dollars in contracts. Oh, and of course, do you think that Google reports the income it gets from the CIA and the NSA to its investors and in its financial reports? No, they don't. It's absent. Now, why would they do that? Do they not want people to know that they've got these massive contracts with the CIA and the NSA and some of the military-industrial complex? Or did the CIA bind them to a secrecy agreement telling them that the CIA's budget and contracts are secret or classified, which they are, prohibiting Google from telling their investors how much the CIA is investing in Google? I think it's the latter. I think the CIA has bound them and restricted them from saying how much in contract money they're getting from the CIA, because the CIA's budget is secret and these contracts are classified. That's how they do it. So I'll make this quick, but this entire program was funded through what the CIA called, the NSA, the Massive Digital Data System, or MDDS project. And what initially what the CIA and the NSA and some compartments in the Pentagon were trying to do is locate an intelligence system that could, through information available on the net and through these searches, it called Birds of a Feather program, where they could find people with the same attributes, the same behavior, the same movements, the same meeting places. And using MDDS as their base, they could locate these people. Of course, they always say groups of terrorists, which is true. That's a sad thing. This stuff works for terrorists and also works on Americans. And I do know this because I taught counterterrorism for the government. Terrorists use Google Earth to plan their targets quite regularly, right down to the street level.
Yeah, that was a major concern that Chris Peranto expressed to me when I met him at the gun show in Las Vegas. He was talking about how the CIA compound in Benghazi was under attack with this particular type of mortar. I don't know anything about, I don't remember what he said about it, but some kind of mortar where they shoot it and then they can very precisely adjust it. And he said that they were calculating the coordinates of the place based on Google Earth. He was very upset that they had Google Earth. It was too accurate, he said.
Yeah, he was exactly right. By the way, Tonto's a great guy, man. If he's
You just did an appearance with him, didn't you?
It's been the Benghazi tribute, I think 2 years ago, or no, it was up in Peachtree, Georgia. We did a Wake Up America thing, he and I together, had a little time in the green room. But I'd encourage anybody if they have a chance to go see him because he's awesome. He's got a great sense of humor.
You know, Kevin, Peranto does a firearms, I mean, you don't need the training, obviously, but it might be cool for you and I to go do one of his firearms classes and, like, hang out and shoot guns with Chris Peranto.
Hey, man, you're talking to me.
We should look into that.
That's half my life there, buddy. Yeah, that's what you call working fun. Yeah, we should do that. So MDDS, the CIA program, went out to all of the super scientists, Stanford, Caltech, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Harvard, to develop some of these systems, or at least to put this birds of a feather program before them and say, look, this is what we want to do. Can you do it? They turned it over to these scientists at these universities, which included, of course, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and they began working on the MDDS program, and that's how the bedrock of Google started. So this was called Birds of a Feather. I just talked about it. That was their goal, to identify groups of people with the same behavior. That's great if you use it against terrorism. I think it's a fantastic tool. But if you use it against American citizens, that could lead to some bad stuff. So I just want people to understand that capability is there. It is a very solid tool to gather information on legitimate terrorists, not the ones that the U.S. government has been paying, but the legitimate ones. And people will often ask, well, yeah, you're teaching people these things. I'll be doing some some counter surveillance training in January on Patreon. And I would ask the same thing. Well, you're teaching people how to recognize surveillance. Isn't this tipping terrorists off to how we're tracking them down or how we're finding them? No, absolutely not. When I get into that, you'll see that the techniques that I use are used even in the field overseas. They will work and they can't be countered, even if you know they're going on. So, but we're really careful to make sure that we protect our own real national security and keep things private, that we don't want to fall into bad hands.
And Kevin, thanks for bringing that up. I meant to remind everyone, for our viewers that are watching now on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, Kevin is going to be introducing a whole bunch of new content that's going to be exclusive to patreon.com/Kevin_ship. So people who aren't yet subscribed to Kevin's page, please go do that, and you can get that counterintelligence video, right?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I'll be doing a weekly course on countering surveillance, countering criminal surveillance, terrorist surveillance, and illegal government surveillance. And that will probably go on for about 6 months. I'll even be out on the street demonstrating some of this on the program. So yeah,
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. That's nice. I'm going to have to get that.
You need it.
I do need it. I know.
Yeah, the way your profile's going up, man, I think, yeah, maybe I'll sit down and we'll have like a crash course. All right. Okay. So it was the CIA grants, and this is the important part because Google denies this, but it was CIA grants that allowed Sergey Brin and Larry Page to do their work, develop their codes, programming that led to Google and Google Earth. That's just a fact. They don't want people to know that, and I think probably if people were to know that, they do some more searching and find out the amount of contracts that Google has in the billions with the CIA and the NSA right now for global surveillance. So, as I mentioned a few times now, Google conveniently leaves this part out of their story. They don't want people to know it. In fact, it's a documented fact. I've already mentioned this too many times, but this is all from CI/NSA grants, the money that came in that actually enabled the scientists to create Google. So as I mentioned earlier, and this is I want to stress this, these Google executives and some of their lower employees are working with the CIA on classified projects. To do that, they have to sign a CIA secrecy agreement, which I signed. What that agreement does is bind Brin and Page and their associates and the people working underneath them on these projects. It binds them for life from discussing anything about this program, anything about the contract, anything about that they disagree with, like Bill Binney did, Tom Drake did, and Kirk Wiebe did, discussing anything, even if it's illegal. They're bound by this. Google is bound by this. Its executives are bound by this. Their employees that work on these projects are bound by this. So they're not going to talk about it to anyone, because if you were to read this carefully, there's a threat of criminal penalty or prison in this thing.
Wow.
And average people won't go there.
That's a hell of a business contract, Kevin. At least it's not redacted. They can read it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's just the way they want it. It's a business contract, almost mafia-like, yeah, you accept this deal and you got to remember it's for life, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, you're stuck, they're stuck with it. You could be 98 years old and violate that agreement. They'll put you in jail for the remaining 2 years of your life.
Wow.
And this is interesting here. And I think, click on it again, Jason. I think we should have another bullet should pop up. There is, for each one of us out there, there is a digital copy of you and of I, our movements, what we buy, even how we think, our behavior, who we're associated with, where we work, where we go to school, our mail that comes through the post office and is surveilled by Lockheed Martin. So there is essentially a digital Jason Goodman and Kevin Shipp out there made out of bits and bytes, including essentially, and that's what Amazon and the CIA got together with their $600 million contract, was to do research on the cloud and reading future trends and behavior from the cloud. And that would be the digital us.
And as a matter of fact, this slide, Kevin, is even taken this is like a block away from my apartment.
This is really?
Yeah.
You know, what a coincidence. That's, you know, I've seen you, now that you mentioned that, you've done, I think, shows walking down that street. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, they got you, brother.
And actually, the Freemason building is just to the right of this.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No kidding. Well, you can see what they can see now with the help of the CIA and Google Earth from space, from a satellite. They can zero in. See that fellow I've got the red arrow pointing out? They can zero right into that fellow's face. Then you throw facial recognition in there, the license plate on the truck there. I mean, they got you. They've got us. Period. Plain and simple. Privacy's dead. This shows you how far down they can get, right down to the human level, man.
You know, but this photo actually causes me to think of something, because this is a little bit of an older photo. There's construction going on that subway stop right now, so there's a big wood thing around it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we've always heard, and you've told me, the CIA has technology that's 50 years ahead. So I would presume, like, if we look at Google Earth, if it's updated every couple months or whatever, probably the CIA can look at real-time video.
Yeah, of course. They're part of that contract. They're part of the ones who built it, and they're part of the ones that have paid money to Google to be able to access it. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Now, I have a YouTube here. I don't know if we have time to see it, Jason, but this is a YouTube address people should go and look at. It'll show you the power of Google Street View.
Well, what we'll do, Kevin, when you're done with the PowerPoint, we'll do that, because I can't click it from here.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, okay, sounds good. People should check it out. It shows you how they can get right down and look in through your front door. So I mentioned before, here's some more companies dependent on Google. So we've got this massive multi-billion-dollar company connected to our intelligence and defense agencies and their contractors. And then we've got all the businesses that have built themselves on top of that. I mentioned Uber. Amazon, as we all know, is directly connected to the CIA and happens to own the Washington Post. What a coincidence. Mockingbird paper #1. Facebook, eBay, Tinder, Apple, Lyft, Foursquare, Airbnb, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and even Angry Birds.
Wow.
That's what really pissed me off, man, was Angry Birds, man. That's the last straw.
Well, it
So
is
anyway,
pretty sinister though, because I
yeah.
mean that's a game. Like what do they care about what you're doing? I never used Angry Birds, but what do they care about what you're doing with Angry Birds?
Yeah, well, funny, the Intrinsic and Keyhole started off as gaming programs. It all
Hmm.
started off from the gaming industry, and it was so popular they started expanding it from there. So it started off as a 3D gaming program. That was the original goal.
Wow.
Uh, and we know this, sadly, and this is Google's turned our phones into bugs, our computers. And now with what you and I are doing right now, whatever we do on the internet and Google, Alexa, and all that other stuff goes right in to the corporate-owned surveillance, massive network connected to SAIC, Lockheed, Booz Allen Hamilton, on and on and on through the CIA and the NSA. So there is no such thing as privacy. And you know, you've got, I'm not going to mention them by name because I don't want to hurt anybody's business, but you've got email programs out there that claim to be encrypted, and you can
Right.
use those, and the CIA, NSA can't penetrate those. The majority of those are baloney. The NSA's gotten into them. They're a piece of cake. The NSA has developed the Utah Data Center and other places to crack just about any encrypted code in the world. So I just want to make sure that people don't get a false sense of security when they go on some of these so-called encrypted sites. I know one that I think is pretty good, but the majority of them, NSA's already cracked them. So be careful, people.
But Kevin, isn't it also true that when it gets to the stage where, now, however well encrypted it is, when you transmit it, if you're looking at it on the screen of your computer, they can see it?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And you know, it is private investigation. I used to be a private investigator. They do this all the time. Airspace is not bound by privacy laws. Anything that's out in the air can be picked up, grasped by anybody, the government, private investigators, private citizens. So any data that's transmitted through the air is basically open game. And of course, there is equipment out there that can scoop that stuff up right from the air, decrypt it, and then picture it.
So somebody just sits outside your house, gets your Wi-Fi thing, and reads all your stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We have a friend out here. I have a picture on my phone, as a matter of fact, of Mr. FB45, and we're down in the woods, somewhere deep in the southern United States. But so we're not close to anybody, and Mr. FB45 is logging on full strength to our router all the time. And now we have a second one. It says it's a personal computer desktop XY 02.570 is also logged on to our Wi-Fi at the same time. So Wi-Fi's are not secure. What you want to do if you want to stay secure is get yourself a good fiber cable network coming in, and don't use Wi-Fi, which Wi-Fi emanations anyway are not good for you.
Well, it's almost impossible to do. Most devices don't even have a hardwired network option anymore.
Yeah, that's right. We have developed one here on our farm. We'll have to do a show on that, on not just the dangers of EMF, but also how to defeat it in your own. You can still get around it. I mean, you lose convenience, but EMF, I am absolutely convinced EMF is very healthy to sit next to your router and have that kind of pulsated emissions hitting you, the entire time you're there, or in the other room for that matter. So Anyway, maybe we'll do a show on that.
Sure.
Okay, so here we go. Remember Amazon, CIA, mapping behavior, future behavior, and trends. This is what Google is doing. They monitor where we go. They monitor what we do, what we talk about, who we talk to, our friends, neighbors, doctors, coworkers, and who we see. Everything is recorded. Now, we know the NSA stores all of this, 1.5 billion bits of information a day in the Utah Data Center. And it's all of this. It's all of our electronic person is gathered and stored by Google and the NSA, and NSA stores it for good. So, and then what Google does is they sell the digital us to advertisers for money, and they make millions. That's not all. That's what people think Google is doing. They are on a massive scale, but what people don't know is Google is also running programs for the CIA and the NSA to the tune of billions of classified contracts in dollars, billions of dollars. in classified contracts. So think about this, as I put down in the bottom bullet there, billions of searches on Google a day, 1 billion Gmail users, 1 billion Gmail users. Google has access to read virtually the majority of the emails written and sent around the world. Who's saying what to who? They've got it. They've got it all. They've got the platform. They've got the channels. They've got access to all of our email that we use through most of the world. And still, a good quarter of our traffic goes through Google's own servers. So it's a juggernaut. Some things, just some facts about, as we're moving on here, about the CIA and the NSA's role here with Google. There is an office called Google Federal that is just a couple of miles from, guess where? CIA's headquarters in Langley, my former home. And what they do is that office is there to gain CIA contracts, $1 million CIA contracts, military industrial contracts with Lockheed and others. Google Federal, that's what they do, and they have an office that they work out of there in Reston, Virginia.
I've never heard of that before, and I'm Googling it right now, and nothing shows up.
Yeah, it's there.
So it's become so ubiquitous.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's just, and that's just the way they like it until now. So in 2003, a $2.1 million contract with Google won, and a lot of these are single source because Google is the only one that can do it. So no one else can bid for the contract. It just automatically goes to Google, and the agreements are signed, and that's it. The $2.1 million contract to outfit the National Security Agency. Click another bullet. These are just examples of the size of some of these contracts. 2004, Google landed another contract with the CIA, and a large one. Remember, we're talking a total of billions. And the value of that contract that Google has with the CIA is not known. What a surprise. Down at the bottom there, 2006, Google is recruiting managers from, guess where? Army, Special Ops, Air Force, which has a number of classified programs using Google Earth, assisting Google Earth, the CI, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin. A lot of those managers leave. I saw this when I was there. A lot of those managers leave the CIA, the NSA, and some of the SOCOM programs and others, and they go to work for Google because the pay is about 50, 60% higher. I was making six figures when I left and went with one particular the intelligence contractor. So now, as you would imagine, Google now has a very powerful lobbying firm that lobbies congressmen and senators in Washington to pass Google-friendly legislation. And that's why you notice that you never see any congressmen or senators, with the exception of Rand Paul, demand reform on the intelligence shadow government and its surveillance capabilities ever.
Well, there's also no antitrust actions being taken against Google. I mean, they control all these different companies. We've seen, I mean, like you just said, Google has things that are integrated with Apple and some of these others. Here, let's try this.
So there's no antitrust laws happening when Google acts in concert with Apple.
Alex Jones or whatever it might be, and that's very strange. You know, the other thing I'm thinking, Kevin, as I look at this, you're saying that Google Federal is recruiting managers and salespeople from the Army and the Air Force. I know two people who used to be in the Army and the Air Force who are doing a lot of crap on YouTube and some of these other Google outlets. I wonder if they aren't also hiring operatives from those agencies.
Well, that's what they do. I would lean in towards that conclusion. You know, when I give speeches, I would many times I'll leave 2 seats vacant in the front row, and then I'll announce we got 2 VIP seats for the informants out there. If you raise your hand, you can come up and we'll put you in the front row. And of course, we never have any takers on that. But they're all over the place. I mean, really, these informants and these penetrations are all over the place. And Google is now actually staffed by these people. And I think you're right in your conclusion. So Now, I want to remind everybody also that these are our tax dollars. The amount of money we all see come out of our paycheck every week, every 2 weeks, $60 billion a year of that tax money goes into the U.S. intelligence budget.
Wow.
And if you've seen any of my previous presentations, I find that upsetting because they're claiming that Social Security is bankrupt and they're going to have to cut parts of the program. Medicare is too expensive and it's not going to last past 2020 and on and on and on. And pardon me, you're spending $60 billion to spy on us and the world, and you're telling us that you can't afford Social Security and Medicare, which people paid into their entire life. I mean, that's just an outrage. I like to say that because I want that out there. I want people to understand that they're taking this money from Americans' vital needs, their personal needs, their real safety and security, and they're spending it on surveillance, starting wars that we don't even vote for.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel better now. All right. Google's goal, and they don't make this secret at all, it's to penetrate every level of society, civilian and federal agencies alike, cities, states, local police departments, EMS, emergency responders, hospitals and health records, public schools and their records, companies, smaller companies, and even nonprofits. They want their foot in everything, even down to the state and local level. That should scare the daylights out of everyone. And here's an interesting one, Jason.
Oh, yeah.
Google invested $100 million in, guess who? A foreign-owned CrowdStrike. Now, when the DNC claimed it was hacked by Russia instead of Seth Rich, the FBI said, well, we'll come in and we'll do an investigation on DNC and see who hacked. And the DNC refused to let the FBI come in and do an investigation. Well, there's a red flag right there. So guess who they hired? CrowdStrike, in whom Google invested $100 million, which is a big-time military-industrial cyber defense contractor that the DNC hired to do this. And if you look at CrowdStrike's background and their owner, it's directly has connections to Russia.
Well, it's Dmitry Alperovitch and Sean Henry, Russian. Well, he's an anti-Russian American of Russian descent. His father, I believe, is an expat, and Sean Henry is an ex-FBI guy. So again, it's another one. I mean, that's a classic cutout, right? The guy's working for the FBI. He has a very deep understanding of the types of things that they cannot do. And he says, hey, I got a great idea. Why don't I start a private company that can do all these things and then get hired by the FBI?
Yeah. When the contracts or the work was already there for him, he just stepped out, sometimes claiming to have been retired, and then gets the contracts that he knew were there, and they know who he is, and they're sole source many times, and boom, they get him.
Wow, you've just raised another amazing point, Kevin. So the guy says he's retired, but if he's working counter surveillance or counterterrorism or whatever for the FBI, everything that he does at CrowdStrike could be done under the pretense that he's spying on these Russian guys or whatever, and they can keep him there as long as that's convenient. Here's another thing I wanted to ask you about, Kevin, because I suspect something like this is happening to Michael Flynn. Whenever someone is involved in the CIA or the DIA or the FBI, they're so deeply entrenched in these clandestine operations, elements of which obviously are technically illegal or blatantly illegal. It seems like there is kind of an open door for the agency at any time, particularly with someone as high level as Michael Flynn, to basically just thumb through a file and decide which of these operations can we just blame on Flynn and charge him with the crime.
Well, that's a very good point. I got an example for you. One of the things that General Flynn was doing with Turkey, what they're not telling you is his contracts with Turkey ended before he joined the Trump campaign. So he was not doing this while he was being groomed for national security advisor. But here's something that's interesting. He was working with Turkey to extradite Fethullah Gulen from the United States to Turkey because Turkey was convinced Gulen tried to bring down their government. Well, Fethullah, I think it's Fethullah is his first name. Anyway, Gulen, turns out Gulen's schools were used by the CIA as cover for CIA agents engaged in espionage overseas. Now, Michael Flynn knew Gulen had been doing that. Michael Flynn probably very certainly knew Gulen was connected to the CIA, and Gulen was indeed trying to overthrow the Turkish government. So Michael Flynn was working with Turkey to get Gulen's rear end over there so they could prosecute him. Enter the CIA. I think the ones that were involved in leaking Flynn's a conversation with the Russian ambassador, I think the CIA was involved in those leaks. I think there's enough evidence there to at least reach maybe a partial conclusion there. But just knowing the CIA, I think that's very possible. So the CIA decides, oh, hey man, this guy is with Turkey messing up one of our highest paid assets, who now lives in Pennsylvania, and to extradite him over to Turkey with the stuff that he knows about CIA programs and agents. We just can't have that. So we got to stop this guy Flynn from doing that. We got to bring him down. And that's something you don't hear of anywhere, is Gulen's role in this whole thing regarding Flynn and his contacts with Turkey.
It was fascinating to see that hearing, Kevin. I'm sorry you couldn't be there because, you know,
Yeah.
even if you read the transcript, you miss a lot of the nuance. I mean, observing Michael Flynn in the courtroom, stone-faced is an understatement. It just seemed like there's so much in his head that he knows that he can't say. And they also spoke for the first time, as far as I'm aware, in detail about this case in the Eastern District of Virginia that involves other people in the Flynn Intelligence Agency. And it seemed almost like a lever that they were using against the general.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they are. I'm sure. I know personally, I'm convinced that the CIA and John Brennan were a part of bringing Flynn down. I don't think there's no question in my mind about that. And I think General Flynn knows that now. That's just my personal opinion.
Wow.
Well, okay, so here's Google's mission statement or their philosophy statement. Don't be evil, they say, right? Well, the problem with that, this mission statement is flat out, it's a false image to make the public think that they're all altruistic or philanthropic or when they're exactly the opposite. If you hit the next bullet there, you'll see that they're not after don't be evil at all. They have an aggressive strategy to become essentially a massive corporate arm of the CIA and the NSA, similar to Lockheed Martin. We'll get into Lockheed one of these days, but it's the CIA in private, as a private company. So, and Google is expanding, especially intelligence and with the CIA and the NSA. Google is expanding into that world. Let me go a little farther than that. Google just hasn't expanded into the world of military defense contractors, the military industrial complex, and the CIA. It's all through it with its contracts. So Google is woven in with the shadow government, as I call it, the intelligence community, and some parts of the Pentagon. It's all through it. So don't be evil. Follow the money, Jerry. Google has gotten billions of dollars in contracts from the CIA, NSA, Lockheed, and others that have given it money to do their dirty deeds many times. So they are now, as Lockheed is using Google. They're the private spying arm of the NSA and the CIA. I want people to understand that when somebody mentions Google's connection to the CIA and some journalist will poo-poo it or someone else, they can come back here to patreon.com and sit that person down so that they can watch this presentation. These are all facts. They're all backed up. They're all documented, and they can walk their way through it. And if they don't change their opinion, the only word I can think of is moron. Anyway, so as I mentioned a little earlier, these are all free services, right? We get free Gmail. We get free internet searches. I use them all the time. And they're free to consumers. So we think, hey, man, this is all free stuff. What a deal. What we don't realize is it's a lure to get us to give them our private information. And even the agreements, the small letters at the bottom of Facebook and Twitter and Google and all the others essentially say, which nobody reads, you're giving away your privacy to us when you check this box. And that's like way down there. You know, and you're giving away all your data and your private information to us when you join. And that's why they haven't been able to get Google or any of these others, Facebook, because the person signs the agreement. And in other words, it's very hard to get around that, and they know it. They set it up like that. They buried it down in the contract. knowing that your average Fred or Irma are not going to read all the way down there and see that stuff, or Kitty or Tiffany in college are not going to read down and see all that stuff. So it's a monster, Jason. Google is a monster. It's convenient, like Amazon is. It's customer service. Amazon's customer service is superb. Google's internet searches are fantastic. But as has always been the case, I think it was Ben Franklin that said, when we sacrifice our safety and security, or when we sacrifice our liberty for safety and security, we deserve neither. And that applies here. So for all that free stuff, this is what we get. Complete data collection, as the top bullet says, in the military, government, public education. I went through that. Every sector of American life, Google is capturing data on all of us or our digital selves out there. And then the question is, it's never answered because a lot of these contracts are classified. I think in another lecture, Tyranny of Secrecy, I have a slide in there. If the CIA wants to conceal something, they just classify it. And they get away with it because they've got that authority. So the question is, what does Google do with the data that flows through its system, billions of pieces of data on us every day? What does it do with that information? Well, they won't answer those questions directly, probably because much of it is classified CIA, NSA contracts. It is a massive corporate system. The CIA is a global juggernaut. Google also is a connected global juggernaut. We don't know because no one is telling us what Google's limits and restrictions are. You made a good point about antitrust laws. They're not bound by those, nor is Amazon. That's allowed them to grow into a monster. And that's what we have now, a very convenient public service monster that is surveilling all of us globally. So I'll close with this famous quote. We have found the enemy, and the enemy is us. The biggest surveillance monster in the world is right here under our nose. We do internet searches with it. We send emails back and forth to each other with it. We send tweets and Facebook and other things that are all connected to this. And as I mentioned a couple of times, you and I have there's a digital Jason Goodman out there with all this data that they've collected. And the purpose of this program is just to alert people to the size of Google and what Google is involved in. What we can do about it, that's another show. What we're doing about it right now is educating people so they see what this thing is. And any movement towards freedom always starts with the people being educated and understanding what the threat to the Constitution is, or to the rights of privacy. It starts with people being informed. And that's our goal tonight.
Wow. That's a hell of a presentation there, Kevin. Let's take a quick look at this YouTube video.
Yeah, sounds good.
Left, look for the Street View layer and turn this on. Once you do this, you'll see gold camera icons appear over countries that have Street View imagery available. As you zoom in, you'll see more and more camera icons appear. The closer you get, the more appear. We're flying into Raleigh, North Carolina, which also happens to have 3D buildings if you have the 3D buildings layer turned on, and I'll show why in a minute. But once again, as you get closer into the streets themselves, you'll see all of the camera icons appear that are available. And when you get really close, you'll see spherical photos. These spherical photos are the Street View images themselves as seen in 3D. If you click on one, a place mark appears and you can click on the photo to go into the photo. This is the photo viewer mode of Google Earth. In the upper right, you see controls for controlling the view. Drag the white rectangle to move the view around to the different portions of the photo. This lets you look around the spherical view. You can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out, and the gadget in the upper right to zoom in and out. Now, a neat feature in Google Earth is there's a transparency layer in the middle. If you have the Street View layer selected, you can drag this and see the 3D images or other imagery available in Google Earth and compare it to the photo, the Street View photo. And as you can see, the Street View photos are perfectly aligned with the underlying 3D information.
Wow.
So there's the 3D buildings, and
Yeah,
there's the
it
street
goes
view
to show
image.
you, and it's even more.
Very cool.
Resolution is better than this.
It's just
Seeing
incredibly sophisticated in what it can do and the amount of imagery and data. I mean, there's so many buildings that have been 3D modeled. It does seem like a tactical. You could do anything with all this data.
Well, yeah, and the military used this technology in Iraq. I don't know if you saw the pictures of the cruise missiles flying down the street, and they take a right, then they take a left, then they take another right, and go right pinpointing into their target and hit their target. That was all done through this technology and the Google Earth NGA scientific developments that they've done. We're steering these missiles with precision right down to the street level. So what we're seeing here, they could put a missile in the back of that SUV easily using National Geospatial Intelligence Agency data through the what is now the Google Earth program system.
Kevin, did you hear about the death of that scientist, Molly McCauley? I think she worked for the National Geospatial Association. She was murdered like a day or maybe like one day before Seth Rich or something. Yeah, one day before Seth Rich.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
That was what the focus of the conversation with David Hawkins was, and it's amazing how what you've brought up today is so related. I'd love to get you on a show with David Hawkins sometime, Kevin. You guys should share notes.
I love the reverse engineering, crime scene engineering. I love it. I think it's a great and really useful concept that can be used. And I think David does a great job using it to trace a crime back to its origin. So yeah, I'd be glad to do that.
Wonderful. We'll coordinate a meeting. Well, Kevin, thanks for another. I mean, that was one of the most fascinating presentations that you've done. It caused me to think of so many things. I mean, Google obviously has offices in every country, so I wonder if it's possible, if there are laws or certain limitations to doing something in one country, they could just do it in another. They're this giant international thing.
I think so. I'll give you a brief example that the NSA, since it was caught spying and storing information in the United States, has created what they call traffic shaping. And they've taken their main hubs outside the United States, put them, for example, in the UK. They're still spying on us, but they're running that information through their junction, their server in the UK, and then back to the United States. They're still spying on us, but the actual junction and server is not located in the US. That's how they're pulling that. And you can be sure Google, they're connected to them at the hip, would do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Kevin, thanks so much for another great presentation, and happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. Our next show, of course, will be after Christmas. So I don't know, do people still have time, Kevin, to visit fortheloveoffreedom.net and order a copy of From the Company of Shadows and get it in time for Christmas?
No, I don't think there'd be time, because the way we do it through the website is the publisher ships it to me, and then I sign it and we put the code on, and then it gets shipped out. So no, they don't have the time before Christmas.
All right. Well, possibly people, and you can't get it from Amazon anymore. Is this the only way to get it? Is here?
Sure.
They can.
Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, they can, except it's not signed and there's no code. That's fine. They can get it from Amazon. We're still selling quite a bit on Amazon, so that's fine if that's what people want to do.
Wonderful. So if people want that book in time for Christmas, you can go to the CIA-controlled Amazon.com and order From the Company of Shadows. But of course, the best way to get it is by going to fortheloveoffreedom.net. You can order the book here. You can see these concealed documents that Kevin has recently released. This includes the environmental test of his home that the CIA did not want you to see. And of course, at the website here, you're going to get the shadow code, which will unlock the redacted elements of the book. It's super important that we support Kevin. Whistleblowers like Kevin from within the clandestine agencies are the only way that we know about what's going on in these crazy agencies. So please go and visit patreon.com/Kevin_ship if you're watching right now on patreon.com/crowdsource.
Yeah, Jason, I lost audio on you there.
I was trying to kill the echo while I was sharing your links
no
there,
worries,
Kevin.
No worries.
No, Kevin, there's been a huge dust-up with Patreon. They have done something quite objectionable. They closed down the account of a guy named Carl Benjamin. Carl was on a YouTube interview, not even on Patreon. He was fighting with some alt-right extremists who were, I guess, Nazis or KKK guys. And in what I guess he hoped would be ironic, he called these guys the N-word. He said, "You're acting like a bunch of N-words." And because he used that word, which agreeably is, or I should say admittedly, a word that should not be used, but they totally canceled his account. And I don't really think that's the right thing to do. We've developed this idea that people don't have the right to use hate speech. I mean, I guess Patreon has the right to not do business with someone that uses a word that they don't like, but I just feel like it's such a slippery slope. We are still on Patreon, but I want to try to have some words with them and try and understand why they did that and how people can be assured that they aren't becoming some, you know, control-obsessed corporation that, you know, they decide what morality is okay. I think Patreon probably endorses a lot of things that other people might not like. But if we can all agree that there's going to be things about people we do business with that maybe we don't agree with, and I mean, my personal opinion is as long as you do anything that's against the law, you should be allowed to say what you want, even if it is objectionable. I mean, that's the very definition of freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech is so important. Yeah, and if those people say offensive things, people can go in and nail them in the comments section, you know.
Or cancel their own Patreon subscription to that particular person, and let's let the market decide. I mean, if people don't want to hear that word, that guy's business will dry up. So I'm a little sad that Patreon chose to do that, but unfortunately, I'm not really in the position to ditch Patreon. We're working on a couple of our other alternatives. Part of the reason I came here to the Turning Point USA conference, Kevin, was because we had Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin who were speaking at the conference today, and they had announced plans for a Patreon alternative. But after posing the question to Jordan Peterson, I got the impression that they're talking about a Patreon alternative for them and their viewers, not necessarily a service that they're going to offer to people like you and I. So I think we might need to be with Patreon for a little while longer. Another interesting thing that I think you'll find quite curious that we need to bring up with Patreon, the person who is the head of their trust and safety department worked for PayPal for 8 years. And when the Patreon competitor Subscribestar started coming on strong in the wake of this controversy, PayPal pulled support for Subscribestar. So again, that seems like two large tech companies working in conspiracy to defeat competition, which is un-American. So frankly, I would rather allow someone to use that N-word than to violate the premises of freedom of speech and free market competition and all the things that really make this country great. There are always going to be jerks who say stupid things, but we can't allow this type of totalitarian control to stifle everyone. It's really a serious issue.
Well, yeah, there should never be any controls on freedom of speech, and history has shown us in the U.S. that people who say hateful or stupid things, they tend to get washed out by their own actions, you know, and that's what happens in a free society. People that want to be hateful or stupid, they get washed out of their own making, and that's why democracy works, and that's why the free market works.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you again for a great presentation tonight. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. I hope you and your family have a wonderful holiday. I hope you get some vacation time. And I'll see you next week right here on the Intelligence Assessment.
Sounds good, Jason. We'll see you then.
Thanks for watching, everybody.